Taras, our guest. So I have started the recording. So I will start sharing the presentation. Can you see properly? So welcome for this session from the local group Darmstadt. So why smart manager make bad decision and how to fix it with our guest Taras Fedoruk. So just a quick agenda. I will just give you the suggested conduct, present you a bit the local group Darmstadt and the PMI Germany chapter, and I will as well introduce our speaker. So then Taras will have about 1 hour, 10 minutes to present, and then at the end I will give you the information for the next event as well as the PDU code. And for sure, for this session, you are welcome to address any question to Taras. So you can write in the chat, and I think we will have a little Q&A as usual at the end. So as suggested conduct, so please mute your microphone during the session. You can use your full name so I can identify you to give your PDUs. You can turn on the video if you wish, but this session as well is recorded, so you feel free to turn off if you wish. You can add in the chat some questions, share your LinkedIn for networking, and you are welcome as well at the end to speak for the Q&A session. And just to remind you, so the use of AI transcript is strictly prohibited, but this record will be made available as well as the deck for you for reference. So just to give you some information, so the PMI Germany chapter was created in 2020. So it's you can see it's 5 regions, and we are in the region Central, and we have more than 25 local groups and 5 in this region. There is 11,000 members in Germany, and with more than 43 countries represented. And there is 150 volunteers who are allowing this chapter to live, and you are free as well to join us if you wish. And as well, we help a professional. We provide training, certification. So all of that need your support as well. So feel free to join us. If I can give some information about our local group. So we are English-speaking community. We are 5 volunteers from 5 countries. And we try to provide you 2 free online events a month. Since the beginning, we had 2,500 participants, and more than 70 attendees come over and over. So it's really rewarding for us. We organize as well 1 roundtable per month, and I would like to emphasize that because I think it's always nice to meet in person. So if you live in the region as well, feel free to reach out. We have as well our LinkedIn group, so you can as well subscribe, and you will be informed of the next event. And then I didn't show you where it's Darmstadt, but it's next to Frankfurt. So if you can see my pointer here, we are just 25 kilometers from Frankfurt. So I will introduce you our speaker. So Taras Fedoruk, so it's a technical program manager at Booking.com. And it's so I'm very glad as well. It's a past president of PMI Ukraine chapter. He has more than 12-year experience in IT program management, leading diverse projects, and in particular is leading the cloud adoption at Booking.com. He's as well a mentor, and he mentored over 1,400 individuals, and is active member of the PMI. For example, he was one of our guests for PEM for the World, or the charity event we organized in October. So he's really somebody really involved in the project management community. And as well, he was awarded as a best professional in project management in 2019, PMI Rising Leader in 2022, as well as PMI Future 50 in 2023. So I'm very glad that Taras is presenting today for our local group. Thank you to give him a very warm welcome. Thank you. So I will stop sharing and give you the hand, Taras.
Yep, give me a moment.
Yeah, we can see.
Yeah, you can see the screen?
Yes.
Amazing. All right. Then we can start. Thanks again for sharing this Wednesday evening with me instead of your families and your warm chairs and a cup of tea. Today, I want to share with you some observations on one of the topics that is very dear to my personal experience and personal feelings. We will talk about why smart managers, trained managers, highly professional managers are making bad decisions, and whether it's possible to fix it or not. I usually put some fancy quote at the beginning of my talks, and today it would be the quote from late Daniel Kahneman, to whom we will return a couple of times during this presentation. He said that the confidence people have in their beliefs is not a measure of the quality of evidence, but of the coherence of the story that their mind has managed to construct. And this is the main idea of what I'm going to share with you today. The reality around us is not objective in the sense that we all see the same things. The things that we see, that we process, and as a consequence, what we make a decision about are totally different from one person to another. And some of these beliefs can really affect business, your decisions, your teams, your projects and programs. So let me kick off with the simple story. I'm sure that some of you might recognize yourself in this story, maybe not. Just here, I hope it will be interesting enough. So the story goes, there is a company. Let's call like some tier 1 company, right? Some like very big, very respected company, which is about to hire a project manager. And there are two, give or take, similar candidates on this position. So we won't say that one is particularly good and one is particularly bad. Two, give or take, equal candidates. The only difference is that candidate A, let's call her Jane. So Jane comes from another tier 1 company. So imagine Facebook is hiring from Amazon, or Amazon is hiring from Google, or Google is hiring from Microsoft, you name it. And another candidate, let's call her Jill, is coming from some not so famous type of company. Based on the unwritten rule in this company, they decide to hire Jane specifically for her experience in a tier 1 company. So Jane is hired for the project management position, and in this company she is given a great team. Enough resources is provided for her to thrive. The program manager is very welcoming, and the whole environment is working for her success. So in 3 years, she is growing towards program management and then senior program manager. And in 5 years, at some calibration panel, stakeholders all agree that it was a very good hiring decision to hire Jane for this organization. End of story. If we take a look at this story, I want you to take your phones and join me at slido.com. If you're from your computer, then you can use the code. If you're from your phones, please scan your QR code and give me your opinion. How do you rate this initial decision? What do you think about the decision to hire Jane over Jill? We have 23 people in the room. I want at least half of the votes. So don't be too passive. Just put your opinion.
I don't know if I'm the only one, Taras, but I cannot connect to Slido actually.
Yeah, let me check.
Yeah, it's the same. It's asked for SSO, and then when you do that,
let me check.
It says,
let me check, please. Oh,
it's a single sign-on procedure.
Oh. Okay. Something is wrong with this. Give me a moment. I will check something. Just give me a moment.
So in the meantime, you can put in the chat, how do you feel today? Did you have a great day?
I will do it differently then. Mm-hmm.
So Thomas is feeling great. Bettina had a tough day. Stephanie is feeling good, even though it's raining today. And where are you located? To see a bit if our audience is broad today. So Stephanie is from München. Gunda is from Emsbach. Yuri is from Poland in Krakow. We have Norbert from Cologne. Joanna is from Berlin. Bettina is from Nuremberg. So I would say we are another from München. So I would say we are pretty Central Europe, a lot of in Germany and Poland. Oh, Akim is from Vancouver. I hope it's not too, should be very early actually in Vancouver. Hamburg, I can say Kiev. So hi, Alexei from Kiev. Near Frankfurt from Kurt. Alexei is raising the hand. Do you have any question?
No, just say hi, everybody.
Okay, Florian, I think we can go further. I have no idea what happens with Slido, so let's just use the meeting chat. That's even easier. Just let me know what you think from 1 to 5 about the decision, the hiring decision that I just explained 3 minutes ago. Do you think it's a good decision? Do you think it's a bad decision? And since we're using chat, you can actually say, why do you think so? So let's collect some ideas. Okay, three. Can you show the slide again? Well, I cannot show Slido because it doesn't work for some reasons. So we stopped here on the story of hiring a person. Yeah, no problem. Okay, 2, safe, 2, neutral. Okay, took the safe way. Okay, but safe, is it bad necessarily to go safe? Safe might be the easier way. Oh, that's about being the easiest. We need to remember. Decision can be bad. Normal, good decision. Okay, fair. Some more opinions. If you're always hiring, you cannot get new perspective. That's bad. Okay. That's also fair. Sometimes stabilizing is also good. Okay, so the opinion is very different. Some people think that it's safe, and some people think safe is not so good. Some think people say that safe is okay. What I wanted to emphasize with this story is one of the very common cognitive bias that hit managers all over the world. And this bias is called self-fulfilling prophecy. The idea is that you make a decision and then you put a lot of your effort, your resources, everything that you have into the result of the decision. And when it works, you say, this is because I made a good decision. While in fact, the hidden cost of different options remains hidden. You do not know what you lose. And because of that, you live in a world where you were right because of that. While in fact, the true quality of this decision is extremely hard to assess. It's extremely hard to say whether you're a good hiring manager or not. If you just follow this simple thing of like, we have a criterion, we use it, and we are right, because then we provide people with all kinds of resources and support to be successful in our environment. It all brings us to Daniel Kahneman. He passed away last year, and unfortunately, and among other multiple things that he left us with are 2 books, one of which I want to really focus on is Thinking Fast and Slow. Another one is called Noise. I can also recommend you to read it. It is about making decision in the environment of wrong or redundant information. But specifically about Thinking Fast and Slow, this gentleman received the Nobel Prize for economic science in 2002 for a very important and breakthrough idea. He came up with the proof that people are not rational. You see, before Kahneman, the whole economic theory was based on the idea that all people are rational players. They will do the best possible for their interest in different situations on the market. And Kahneman was, together with his colleague Amos Tversky, the first who proved that in fact people are everything but rational. He is the author of the famous framework with System 1 and System 2. This is why the book is called Thinking Fast and Slow, because the system, what he's calling System 1, is fast, intuitive decision-making system. And this is the system that operates all the time without sleeping in our brain. We shouldn't do anything to make it work. It works by itself without any blockers, problems, etc. Its strength is in providing us with efficient and quick responses on the stimulus that we receive from the outside world. But the problem is that this system is full of stereotypes and something that we call cognitive cliches. So it's extremely prone to bias and error, specifically when stakes are high. We also have System 2. And the decision making in System 2 is slow because the system is using analytical and rational backbone. This system can be thoughtful and very deliberate, but the problem with it is that it's mentally taxing. So it is not possible unless you're practicing some very specific techniques of meditation or maybe some interesting substances to keep this system alive and working all the time. You need to enforce it for work. You need to put some effort in it. Otherwise, it doesn't work. It's sleeping. And if you don't do that, then only System 1 works. So how is it relevant for us as managers? Most decisions that we are making on a daily basis are being made under pressure. We are in the middle of the meeting with the steering committee. We are on one-on-one with our management. We are in the middle of the escalation within the team. Deadline is approaching. So all this pressure engage System 1. So we want to do it fast. We want to engage our intuition, especially if we're experienced managers with 10, 15, 20 years of experience. It is very easy to go on the footsteps of what you've already done throughout your career. But all the biases that we will talk about during today's session thrive in System 1. So to reduce the chance of error, we must pause, we must reflect, and we must consciously activate System 2, especially when decisions are high impact. It doesn't mean that you should do this all the time. Moreover, as I said, it will be hardly possible. But you really need to distinguish the decisions that are light and decisions that are high impact. And for high impact decision, you need to stop. You need to engage System 2 deliberately. How do that? We will discuss a little bit later. So for the purpose of this session, I would like to introduce this type of very typical project management lifecycle. It doesn't mean that it's correct for all. It doesn't mean that it's full, and it doesn't mean that it's extremely detailed. This is just something to step on. So let's assume that for a typical project manager and for the typical company, there are three main steps. So first is the hiring process and how a certain manager enters the company. Then the second step is onboarding. It can be quite lengthy process in different companies, and from different research we know that true onboarding, meaning the moment when the person starts providing value for the organization, it can be from 5 to 9 months, despite maybe formal onboarding can be like from 2 to 4 weeks. And then actually work, daily job, daily routine of a manager. We won't take a look at a journey because it's a little bit different by nature. So we will stop on these three steps, and we will talk about how these steps can be affected by not paying too much attention to the decisions that we're making. So let's start from the beginning. The first step is hiring. Question in the chat. Give me plus or minus if you are or you were a hiring manager in your organizations where you work. Plus if you were or are, and minus if you don't have experience with hiring people. Okay, quite a lot of hiring managers. Okay. Then I'm curious about these examples that I will provide you now, and whether you saw something like this or you experienced something like this as a hiring manager or as a candidate sitting on the other side of the table. So the first example, you are hiring a project manager with the clear request on managing stakeholders, and during the interview the potential candidate gives you one nice story about how she manages stakeholders in her current company. It puts a veil on your eyes and you just heard what you wanted to hear. Everything else drops in the importance. You're ready to hire this person based on a single positive attribute that you've just received. Another story. Let's say it will be the enforcing of the first one. Hearing that the candidate fits into the profile that you have built before the interview, you start asking questions that only confirms your idea. So you subconsciously drop all the questions from your script that might potentially show the red flags. Or reviewing the CVs, you see the people whose career path is very similar to yours, and you understand that if you are such a cool manager as you are, people who are going through your footsteps can be as well amazing managers, so you will consider them in the first place. Or you're conducting the interview for the candidate together with another manager, maybe it's your senior manager, and this manager after the interview says, I can tell you this person is good. It took me literally 10 minutes because I have so much experience in doing that. This is the list of very typical cognitive biases that are supporting the hiring process from the side of the hiring manager. The first one, the ability to overestimate someone's skills based on one positive trait that you see, is called halo effect. So you just pick one thing, and based on this one thing that works for you as a hiring manager, you apply this halo effect on everything else. You say like, yes, this is the candidate that I was looking for so long. You drop everything else. And together with this, the confirmation bias works. So together with dropping this, you reinforce the information that only confirms pre-existing belief, and you don't test anywhere around. Despite of many recommendations that we can read in books or management magazines like HBR, people tend to hire and favor people who resemble them in the background or thinking, and it's called similarity bias. We tend to like people who look like us, who behave like us, and whose career path and experience is similar to ours. And after 1 or 2 or 3 successful hirings, or hirings that we think are successful, we immediately receive overconfidence bias, when we overestimate our abilities to spot talents. And after that, our ego is very hard to shake. We also discussed at the beginning of the session the example with self-fulfilling prophecy, and it is one of the reinforcements for the overconfidence bias. You hire people with a certain trait, then you provide them with all resources they need to succeed. They succeed, you think my hiring is amazing, I will continue in the same way. But it doesn't mean that only hiring managers are prone to cognitive biases. Of course, for the candidates, there are certain biases as well. For instance, you may answer questions on the interview in a way that is seen as favorable rather than truthful. Or you come to the interview unprepared because you overestimate the likelihood of positive outcomes. You already see yourself on this position, and you believe that this role is written for you in stars. You can also behave during the interview assuming that other people think, work, and value things the same way that you do. This is because it's so easy to look in the mirror rather than apply some specific effort to understand other people's context and beliefs. And when you receive your offer, you tend to evaluate the opportunity relative to previous experience rather than its objective value. And if your previous experience was really bad, and you have really run from the company, from the previous company, even the very mediocre offer can be considered by you as great. And you can again lose some opportunities by playing safe just on the contrast. Well, this bias is called the contrast effect. This is when we cannot apply enough objective and critical thinking into evaluating opportunities or options, but we rather just compare them with our previous experience. When we answer questions in a way that is seen as favorable, it's called social desirability bias. I know that for a lot of people, it sounds like the manipulation. And a lot of people have been asking me, like, why is it considered as bias instead of just manipulation or a play, when we answer questions how we want people to, what people want to hear rather than what is true. The point is that social desirability bias is actually bias because it distorts our vision, and the root of this bias is in our inevitable wish to be to belong into the group, to belong into the society. And this is how our brain is trained for million years to get alike. We're also prone to optimism bias, and this is when we believe that we will thrive in a role despite all the warning signs of the cultural misalignment, about the process misalignment, about the difference in context between us and the potential manager. We still think that we believe that this is all very inconvenient, but it is all very small. We will still thrive, and this is the optimism bias. And of course, this is like very mirror thing to the confidence bias is projection bias, when we assume that other things work and value in the same way as we do. So when we come from the startup and we value innovations and we are very proficient in agile way of working, we believe that the hiring team values the same, and we can put it up in front even if we are applying for some very bureaucratic organization. And when we're not hired there, we are extremely surprised why it happens. So as you may see, for this step, just for this single step of hiring, which can take like what in net it will be like 4 hours, right? 4 interviews for 1 hour each or something like this. So basically for 4 hours of work, you can see so many different biases from all sides of this process. Hiring managers, and also you as a candidate, or you as a hiring manager if you hire people. This is exactly the reason why when people ask my opinion about, or like some advice on how to pass the interviews, etc., I always say that interview is the least possible way to test your competencies and knowledge. You should treat interviews as nothing else but the social game. And this is exactly the reason why some people are very good at it and some people are not so good at it. And this is, for instance, the example why some hiring managers then participate in the conference and they say, I have hired many PMPs, they're all not good, so I don't believe in this certification. And vice versa, people who are not that skilled but who are very good at playing this social game can thrive in the workplace and be very successful at the end, simply because they are aware of the model of how it works. And this was hiring. The next step. So you are hired and you are entering a new company. What can happen here? Well, a lot of things, actually. So this is just, this is not a definite list, of course, but something to think about. First of all, you are meeting with your senior leadership and you are blinded again by all these titles like senior director, VP of technology, and all this type of things. So you can overestimate their competence and give them the fuel to believe that despite of the quality of the actual decisions, they are in this position for the reason. You are being onboarded on a project, and the previous project manager or the program manager who onboards you on this project gives you a lot of information about the stakeholders. Some are good and some is not very pleasant. But because of the order of the information, how you received it, you begin to rely too heavily on this first piece of data encounter. So you heard like the previous PM is telling you that this stakeholder is particularly difficult, or this stakeholder is particularly disrespectful. And if you don't pay attention, it colors the entire future interaction with this stakeholder, even if it's not 100% true. When you're getting familiar with the company's knowledge base, you encounter many lessons learned that are mostly about successful outcomes. So you think you understand how this company manages projects, but in fact you saw only one side of the story, which was documented, and nothing else. You did not pay enough attention to what we call tacit knowledge from the team, from other stakeholders, from people who are working longer than you. And of course, when you try to change something, then you notice that people prefer existing practices and they're very resistant to change, and you're not sure why. This is the, as I said, limited list, but a list of very common cognitive biases that you can notice in yourself and also in other people. First, it's a very famous Dunning-Kruger effect, when incompetent individuals overestimate their competence based on simply their ego and their approach to work. So when you, as a fresh PM, enters the environment, you can assume that you understand the domain after one onboarding session, which can be really far from truth. When you rely too heavily on the first piece of information that you receive about stakeholders, environment, or the project, it's called anchoring bias. So you are anchored, and because of this, because of merely the order of information that you have received, it was not done on purpose. It was just like the list of things that another manager wanted to share with you. you are unconsciously anchored to what you hear in what order you heard it, and all your next steps can be affected by this. Another one is survivorship bias, of course, also very famous, and this is focusing only on successful outcomes or so-called visible survivors, while ignoring those that failed and are not longer visible. You read lessons learned that are adopting the process used by the high-perform team of extremely professional people without considering all the teams that might have used the same process and failed. So we are not looking for the best practices, we're only looking for the good practices. Status quo bias is the preference for existing practices and resistance to change. We also can see the bias which is called illusory superiority. And this is the belief that some people or yourself are above average. When you hear a lot of failure stories on a certain project, you may say, okay, other PMs failed there, but I won't. If you remember the book by Tom DeMarco and Timothy Lister, Walls In With Bears, about risk management, they call it they call this entire state of the culture, they call it can-do culture. When people say other fails, I can do that, they also fail, but they are rewarded for trying. And this is why this bias is so dangerous, because it can eat a lot of companies' resources for the sake of just proving someone else's wrong. To sum up, during the onboarding, we are heavily affected by multiple biases that will influence both how we onboard and how we will work from here and further. And after the onboarding, imagine that we work for a year or two, and still we're prone to many biases. We and in general, project managers are notoriously famous for underestimating time and cost for future projects. We usually, as many people, we usually tend to think that despite evidence, certain things will take less time or less cost that we see or that we saw in previous projects. Companies tend to continue projects even if the business case is already proven wrong, simply because a lot of resources were invested already, and we cannot afford this huge machine to fall. We tend to overweight recent or emotionally charged experience instead of applying the objective assessments. The example, you have a project in which you, for certain work packages, you hired a vendor, and your relationship with this vendor failed badly. For the next project, when the make or buy decision is showing that you need to hire a vendor, you are strongly opposing this idea, because you're telling other people that working with vendors is extremely bad idea, simply because your last interaction with the vendor failed. Sometimes we feel that people are being promoted for being active, and you start favoring actions over inaction, even when doing nothing is wiser. You work with your managers to try to change some things based on the lessons learned or results of the retrospectives or postmortems, just to learn that despite you've seen the same problem multiple times in many other companies, and you see how certain standards or very generic approaches can fix it, your managers tell you that our company is very unique. The challenges that we see, nobody ever saw. So we cannot apply anything from your smart books or conferences, and they will just reinvent the wheel with the different names, but very same concepts. This is definitely not the full list. What did I just mention are, first of all, planning fallacy. People, being irrational by nature, tend to underestimate time and cost for future tasks. So we usually tend to create project plans and schedules with overly optimistic timelines. Especially if we do not recognize this bias in other people, specifically in our teams, then our plans can be really unreliable. And then we start projects that are failing, and obviously we cannot achieve the benefits for which these projects have been launched. But surprisingly, our management is okay with that, and they continue financing us. This is called sunk cost fallacy. Because people cannot easily shake off the cost that they have already applied. This example with overrating recent or emotionally charged experience is called availability heuristics. This happens a lot, for instance, when in the personal life, you're considering to buy a car and you want to buy, for instance, Volkswagen, for instance. And then you notice all of a sudden that all the cars that you see around you are Volkswagens. In your neighbors, in your neighborhood, in your city, all you see are only Volkswagens. Another example, which is both from the book of Kahneman and also from my personal experience, is that when you're planning to have a baby, or you're actually expecting, and then all of a sudden you see so many pregnant women around you, it's amazing how you didn't see this before. All these are examples of availability heuristics. When we have available information in front of us all the time, and then we tend to assume that actually a lot of the same things are happening around. Applying with the bad experience specifically, also one of the biases is that people tend to over prioritize bad experience over good experience. Some family psychologists say that to have a happy marriage, the ratio between good experience and bad experience should be at least 5-1. This is how powerful bad or traumatic experience is for us, comparing with a good one. So when your previous project failed because of whatever reason, and you see the same reason in the next project, you automatically assume that it will end as well as the previous project. Of course, specificity bias or uniqueness bias, this is one of my favorite, all-time favorite biases that I see in companies as consultant or as a full-time employee. This is a firm belief of managers that whatever they see or experience in their organizations is entirely unique to the world. No one ever experienced the same, despite, of course, it's not true in 90% of the cases. Also, during these, for instance, self-evaluations, we tend to apply the bias that is called fundamental attribution error. This is one of the most famous biases, so I think you might even heard of that. This is the idea of overemphasizing personal traits and underestimating situational factor when explains other behaviors. So when you need to blame something, then you blame situation. If you need to explain some success, then you put it on yourself. For instance, manager can blame another team member's missed deadline on laziness rather than the workload and unclear scope. So we switch when it's applied to us. If something good happens, then it's because of us, something bad because of the situation. And when we apply on others, it's vice versa. Actually, this bias has even deeper form, which is called ultimate attribution error. And this is the bias in group-based judgment, where positive actions of the in-group are attributed to internal traits of this group and negative ones to external causes. And reverse, this happens for out-group. For instance, our team delivered because we're skilled, their team delivered because they got lucky. If we fail, it's because of the external blockers. If they fail, this is because they are heavily incompetent people. And this is what we have every single day when we go to work. All these biases are affecting us, affecting our managers, affecting our teams constantly. The question is what we can do about it. Unfortunately, this is not math, right? So this is not something that anyone can give you a very specific advice and you apply this advice and it works all the time. As I mentioned, system 2 is extremely resourceful. If you use it all, you simply cannot use it all the time. You will get tired physically. You will get you will need some rest. You will need some food. You will need some sleep in the middle of the day if you're extremely conscious and focused all the time on what happens. Still, there are some things that you can consider. And first of all, of course, is awareness. I will step aside for a moment for the example from the emotional intelligence. This is not the topic for me today, but let's use this as an example because the models are really, really the same. As you may know, when you work with the emotional intelligence, there are 4 pillars. Pillar 1, recognize your own emotions and be able to call them properly. What do you feel? Second is when you recognize what you feel, then you can do something with that. You can try to control and work with your emotion. The third pillar is to recognize and call the emotions in other people. And the fourth, try to work with what you recognize. Not control. By any means, you cannot control emotions of other people, but work with them through empathy, active listening, etc. The very same model can be applied for working with cognitive bias. So, first of all, work on your vocabulary. There are over 200 different biases. The different researchers and scholars were studying over the last 50 years. It doesn't mean that it's possible unless you have an eidetic memory to memorize them all. But at least try to expand your vocabulary to some areas. Like, is it a bias about information? Is it about bias about meaning? Is it the bias that I'm prone to because I need to act fast? Is it the bias because my memory worked not in the way how I expect it to work? Well, one example from this, which I really like, is the so-called memory fragmentation bias. It works because our memory, like how we process events, is that, for instance, after this webinar, in like 5 minutes after this webinar, you might remember it all, even like all the slides in some order. But with the time, what our memory makes is it drops the things that it considers not important and merge the rest. And imagine that I showed you the webinar of like 20 slides, for instance, and after the month, in your memory, you will have a webinar of 6 slides only. But because of that, some of the events that we try to remember after, they look completely different from what they were actually when they happened. And this is the bias, because not recognizing it, not being aware about the possibility of that, we argue with our teams, we argue with our spouses, we argue with our partners, friends, because we like the reality that we remember is no longer the reality that they remember, let alone what happened in fact during this certain event. And some practical strategies, of course. First, use structured interviews and evaluation rubrics when you need to assess people. Use, like, prepare your scripts up front and follow these scripts thoroughly, despite whether you like the information that you hear on the beginning of it or not. Because if you like it, then you're prone to the halo effect. If you don't like it, then you're prone to the anchoring effect, that you think that, okay, this candidate is not good enough. Even after 3 questions, I'm done. I have 5 more, but I don't care anymore. And then you're prone to the overconfidence bias when you say, I already understand, my experience is enough with interviewing these people. That's not our candidate. And you can lose a very distinguished and very valuable person. Have multiple interviews, provide independent evaluations. In general, get committees. Committees are not bad. Committees are actually one of the very proven tools to work with cognitive bias of 1. This is something that you can find in the like research on this topic. You can find in the book which is called Noise. This is the last book from Daniel Kahneman, and one of the things how he suggests to clean the information is to work in committees, and the more diverse these committees can be, the better for your decision making. Standardized processes in general: onboarding, project initiation, project closure, project takeover, project handover. If you have processes that can be standardized or even automated, do that. This repeatable thing can save you a lot of effort in making proper decisions during it. The next one, ask questions. This is something that works for all the biases that we discussed today. Ask questions. You can ask questions from mentors, towards mentors. You can ask your managers. You can ask your committees. You can actually build this like imaginative committee, just asking 5 random people, but this would be the voices in your head, 5 different people providing you with different overview of a certain situation. I really like the quote from George Carlin, one of the best stand-up comedian in my personal opinion. And the quote goes, "Don't just teach your children to read. Teach them to question what they read. Teach them to question everything." This is why I consider critical thinking is one of the top 3 soft skills for any project or program manager. This is the ability to ask questions and the ability to question, but question based on the information. That's the next point, to get data informed, the situations around you, on your projects, in your teams, in your life. Being data informed is a little bit different from being data driven. And I like this definition that I read from the book of Markus Glowacz, which is called Leading with Data. When you are data driven, it means that you are not at the steering wheel. You just receive the data and you act just upon it. And being data informed is a little bit different, because from one side you work with the actual data, and from another side you still work with your experience and intuition. And this blend is the best of both worlds. So how can we get data informed? We apply benchmarking when we work with assessment different options. We conduct risk assessments. We conduct audits. We conduct health checks. So instead of relying on anecdotal memory or some legends within your company or organization, we try to rely on data and then apply our experience to this data. Engage with more people. Different experiences, different context, different cultural background, different education, different roles in the company. Everything builds the diverse view on the situation that you're in. This mirroring bias is something that you need to fight very consciously when you hire people or when you when you ask for like your resource managers to build you the project team, the diverse teams are much better than the people like the teams of the people where everyone is alike. And reflect often. Reflect alone, reflect with people, reflect with mentors, reflect with the people who critique you, with the devil advocates, reflect with coaches, reflect on what you're doing, on the decisions that you're making, and learn from this reflection. What I want you to leave this webinar is, first of all, cognitive biases are not something that you can avoid. Unfortunately, this is something that you should learn to live with. This is with us. This is how our brain is wired. The best you can do is to be aware and try to act at least on some of them. There will be still a lot of decisions in which you will do quick, maybe even irrational, intuitive decisions, and it's fine. But try to recognize the decisions that are really really important and really vital for a certain situation, and then try to turn the key in your engine and launch system 2 for this decision. Expand your cognitive biases vocabulary. Warned means armed. The more you know, the better you can react when something happens. And following the analogy with emotional intelligence, as soon as you can master, at least to some degree, the decision-making process that you apply, then you can start looking for the biases in other people and start gently working with them to avoid these biases. Always talk to trusted people. Discuss your observations, your practice, your decision-making. Have a mentor, have a coach, have a friend, share a beer, discuss, talk to other people. This is definitely not the exercise for you alone. That's all I have for you today. Now the time for some questions. If you are interested in receiving a short PDF with these strategies assembled per cognitive bias that we discussed today, add me on LinkedIn, send me the message, and I will share it with you. Questions?
So feel free to raise any question as well in the chat if you wish. And I have as well shared the Mentimeter to give feedback about the session. So please feel free to answer the survey as well. So maybe we let us 1 or 2 minutes for the people to write down their question.
Yeah. Otherwise, you can unmute yourself and tell me something.
Actually, in the meantime, maybe Taras, I have a question.
Sure.
From my side. Actually, we had a few weeks ago, we had a presentation about diversity and inclusion, and in particular for hiring. I think somehow the bias that you were explaining are a bit the same, because in diversity and inclusion as well, we try to make in place some strategy to avoid that we hire people exactly like us. And it was totally echoing with strategies that you were explaining that we should have a set of questions, we should stick to it to have as objective evaluation as we could. I don't know if you were thinking as well your slide about hiring in that way as well, or
it is an interesting bit of conversation, because as we know, DEI can be applied in many different ways, and some of them are biased by itself as well, right? So personally, I believe in a sort of like anonymized process this is one of the ways to deal with biases, at least at the starting level. And for instance, when I mentor people for the CV creation, or when they ask questions for the CV, I always say, like, first of all, please remove your photo from it. Regardless of whether you're a man or a woman person of color, it doesn't matter. Just remove, because it immediately, especially when it's at the top, the first I see is this, and then you have no idea what type of context will the hiring manager apply. It can be whatever. It can be good. It can be really, really bad, right? So personally, I very much believe in these ATS systems, which can test, at least at the very beginning of the process, to apply the anonymized approach. After that, of course, yeah, there are some biases that cannot be that can be only caught in time, but not just say like, oh, I'm so mindful, I'm entering the room, and whoever I see there, I will be pleased. No, people doesn't work that way, unfortunately.
No, but I think it's really interesting what you say about anonymized process for hiring. Actually, it was set up in France, but actually because when they did some studies, they discovered that, for example, if you come from different background, you have less chances to be hired compared to people who are, I would say, fitting the idea you can have from a manager or for a certain position. But actually, they try to set up this anonymized process, but then they discover that the people who are trying to use this process, so sending anonymous CV, were then penalized, because then they compared to the people who are actually using their data for the process. So it's a bit interesting to see how we act as a recruiter, etc.
Yeah. Just today I read some posts on LinkedIn which went like, black people are judged by their by their qualification. White people are judged by their potential. There was also some sort of research that found out that if you anonymize, like, people are already working, and then you anonymize their CVs and accomplishments, then, like, black people on average are already skilled more than the average white employee, for instance, which was interesting to read by itself. Okay, I see a couple of questions. Let me answer those, and then we can close the session. What resources would I advise to dive deeper into some major biases, if possible, with a focus on practical application? I would suggest you to start with 2 books. Both of them from Daniel Kahneman. One is Thinking Fast and Slow, and another one is Noise. And move from there. I honestly haven't seen any specific, like, courses on any platform, or I cannot give you a name of any trainer or a mentor for that. I assembled all this knowledge by myself from many different resources, but you can start with these 2 books for sure. What do you suggest when the culture of the company is highly system one fast? Run away? No. As one of my friend coaches says, you can always change the company or change the company, right? So as a manager, you can try to change the company first. And also, like, to say if you should run away or not, it means that I should first understand your personal values and personal beliefs. Maybe for you, the company of that style works amazingly well, and you will thrive in this environment, right? Nobody knows. I do not know. One of the biases that I have just avoided live is called the knowledge curse. Knowledge curse is the bias when you know something, or you have some experience, and then you automatically apply it to everyone. Like, if you like potato, then you automatically apply it to that everyone else likes potato. And this is what I avoided now. I might have opinion about such a company, but it doesn't mean that it's your opinion. Okay. again, add me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to continue the conversation. I'm happy to share some of my materials with whoever texts me there. That's it for today, I think.
So thank you very much, Taras. I will stop the recording, but before that, everybody's running over. I have as well some information to pass, so don't disconnect too soon.
Yeah, Florian, please.